Welcome to our 2130 Partners Operating Principle video series. I'm Suzanne Mayo-Frent, Principal of 2130 Partners, a leadership development and education firm. Also, co-author of our book, Accelerate, High Leverage Leadership for Today's World. This video segment focuses on our operating principle, be direct and sensitive. This is one of our 12 operating principles and is a supportive element in the operating principles we list in our book. So one of the aspects of this operating principle, be direct and sensitive, is that word and. We mean both together. And so oftentimes people will think that being direct is the right way to be or being sensitive is the right way to be. We're saying that it takes both of those to be able to have a productive dialogue. So I'll use as one of my visuals in this operating principle our productive dialogue zone. It's a two-circle graphic that shows the intersection of the two circles is what we call the productive dialogue zone. And the top circle is a circle that is more relationship focused, where the concern for social safety outweighs the concern for results. The bottom circle is a transaction focused, where the concern for results outweighs the concern for relationship and connection. And so what we've got in the intersection of these two circles in the productive dialogue zone is a place where we have both relationship and connection as well as results and being direct. So you could say that the top circle is a sensitive area and the bottom circle is direct with regard to this operating principle, be direct and sensitive. We want results and relationship. We want them both together. It's difficult for people like me, for example, who have been very direct most of my life. I see that that is the right way to be. That is the appropriate way to be. That's the only way to be. And that people who aren't direct are wimpy, sensitive, feelings-based people, beating around the bush, just not the right way to be. On the other hand, for those of you who've had the sensitive side as your key, fallback element, you've probably seen that the connection is the overall goal, that when you're in relationship with another person, you can get so much more done, that allows for the kinds of conversations that you need to have to tackle the tough issues. Well, you know what? We need both. The and in direct and sensitive means we need both in order to have the productive dialogue. And so rather than looking at direct, I think of direct as being straight and to the point and frank, just sort of what it is. Although oftentimes direct devolves into being brutal, harsh, or rude. And on the other side, the sensitive, I think of that as having an appreciation for the way my communication impacts others. So I'm sensitive to essentially how it lands over there. Remember our operating principle, be responsible for what gets heard. So this is a way for me to be sensitive to how what I'm saying lands over there with you. So often, though, being sensitive gets downplayed into or gets reduced into being wimpy or weak or based on feelings or emotions or considered soft. So how do we combine these two pieces? How do we be both direct and focused on results and sensitive and connected? Well, on the top circle, you notice in the relationship focus on social safety. On that circle, it says that we have connection. We're connecting with others. We just don't have confronting. So we're not dealing with issues with each other. And what that gives us is the status quo. In the bottom part of the circle, we notice that we have confronting issues, oftentimes mistaken with confronting each other, which is what has it be brutal or harsh. We haven't learned how to separate the issue from the person and work together as a team. So in the bottom section where we definitely have the confronting, we're missing the connection part, we're missing the relationship part. So that can come across as attack or abuse, and that generates defense. So up top we have where that defaults into status quo, and in the bottom circle we have where that defaults into abuse or at least conflict and defense. So what we're saying that takes in being direct and sensitive in that middle zone, in the productive dialogue zone, it takes connecting with another person, takes confronting real issues together, and that takes courage. We like to use David Whyte, who's an Irish poet and works in corporate America with his poetry and has a definition for the word courage. He says courage is cultivating a healthy relationship with the unknown. See, when we're in conversations and communication, working things out with other people, we don't exactly know how it's going to go. We can script what we're going to say, we can think about and be intentional about what we're going to say and how we're going to deal with it. We can't script with the other person how that person reacts or what they say in it. So it takes courage to enter into a conversation that we have an intention to have it be a productive dialogue. And it takes both being direct and sensitive to how the communication lands. So, what are the actions you can take out of this? Well, do some self-awareness, some self-diagnostic. Where do you default? When push comes to shove, do you default to social safety? Your fear of losing the relationship is more important than getting the results? Or do you default into getting the results at the expense of the relationship? So pick where you normally land. I think what you'll find is, depending on the person, the relationship, and perhaps even the topic, you may flip-flop in one or more of these circles. Perhaps you tend to be more relationship focused and focused on social safety and doing whatever you have to do to not lose the relationship at home, and maybe at work you're much more direct and maybe even be considered harsh. So look and see where those areas where you're out of balance, you're in one end of the circle or the other. And if you're a person like me who's been direct more often than not, then pump up your sensitivity muscle, which means be awake, aware, be present, listen newly, be intentionally slow to understand, explore truths, all those principles we've talked about already. Be other-centered. Get a sense of what's going on with the other person. Connect as a human being. Then you'll be able to deal with and confront the issues together much more powerfully. If you're a person who's been more sensitive and kind of tentative and not wanting to rock the boat, then pump up your bold muscle. Start crafting ahead of time. What is the real issue you think you'd like to resolve with this other person? What's really at the core of it? Practice saying it without adding a lot of fluff around the ends or explanation up front or kind of setting the scenery so that it comes out right. And practice being bold. I suspect that if your practice has been to be much more on the sensitive side, the social safety side, than the direct side, if you pump it up to a high level of directness, I don't think you need to worry about getting over it harsh or brutal yet. There's a long way for you to go to take some ground. So wherever is the area that you default to, the work for you to do is to exercise the other muscle so that you can have both being direct and sensitive and be in this productive dialogue zone. So it takes courage. We have stories. I have my own story about the consequences of being direct and nearly losing a job and losing a marriage. You can read about that in the book. There's other resources we have to help you with practices in this area. So get to work. This is an important one. Get to work, practice it, and accelerate your leadership.